Ready? Good morning. Welcome to the May 2025 Hawaii Board of Nursing meeting. We're going to start today's meeting with an informational video about participating in virtual meetings.
Welcome to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting. When the meeting begins momentarily, the chair will take a roll call, explain any specific rules for this particular board, and then move to public comment. The name of the board member will appear on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. For instance, this is board member Y, and this is board member E. Public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. You can indicate that you are ready to testify by clicking on the Raise Hand button being circled by the mouse on your screen now. At the appropriate time, the board will recognize you to speak and ask you to unmute your mic as shown here. Again, public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. Public attendees will not be able to unmute their microphone until recognized by the board. Public attendees who are recognized to testify will be asked to identify themselves by name and their affiliated organization if applicable. Please mute your microphone when you are finished speaking as a courtesy to others and members of the board. Public attendees will not be able to unmute themselves after the testimony is completed unless recognized again after raising their hand. At some point during the meeting, the board may choose to move into executive session. When the board moves into executive session, the board members' microphones and video feeds will be turned off, and a similar screen as you see now will be displayed. When the board returns from executive session, their microphones will be turned on, as well as their video cameras. Welcome again to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting. At this time, the chair will call the meeting to order and take a roll call, as well as explain any additional rules that may be specific to this board.
Good morning. It's May. Happy Lay Day.
Hey.
All right, before we get started, I'm going to read redundantly some instructions about participating in virtual board meetings. As a reminder, if you wish to provide testimony to the Board of Nursing, you may do so in writing by submitting an email to nursing@dcca.hawaii.gov or by hard copy mail to the address listed on the agenda. We do request submission of testimony at least 24 hours prior to the meeting to ensure that it can be distributed to board members. Also, you will be able, any member of the public would like to provide testimony on an agenda item. When we get to the agenda item and you'd like to provide testimony, raise your hand because I might forget to ask. That doesn't preclude your ability to provide testimony. If you're participating by internet access, please if you wish to view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, please use the link at the top of the agenda. You will be asked to enter your name. The board requests that you enter your full name, but you may use a pseudonym or other identifier if you wish. You will also be asked for an email address. Please fill in this field with any entry in a standard email format. Your microphone will be automatically muted. When the chair asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about that agenda item. The chair will individually enable each testifier to unmute your microphone. When recognized by the chair, please unmute your microphone before speaking and then mute your microphone again after you finish speaking. If you are attending with audio only access by phone, when the chair asks for public testimony, you may indicate that you want to testify by entering star and then 9 on your telephone's keypad. After entering star and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chair, you may unmute yourself by pressing star and then 6, and a voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you're finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 again to remute yourself. For both phone and internet access, when testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If the connection to the virtual meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a specified date and time to be indicated on the board's website. And as always, instructions to attend State of Hawaii virtual board meetings is available online. All right, we're going to take a roll call today. My name is Carrie Oliveira. I'm the chair. I am present. As a reminder for those of you board members who are attending virtually, please indicate whether you are alone in your location when you indicate that you are present. Right, so please indicate that you are here. Diana Jill Riggs, Vice Chair.
Present.
Karen Boyer.
Present and alone.
Bradley Kuo.
Present.
Rebecca Moore.
Present and alone.
Sherry Shields Hansen.
Present.
Terrence Aratani.
Present and alone.
Thanks, Terrence. And that's everybody. Woohoo, we have a quorum. The meeting is called to order. Okay, first item on the agenda is the chair's report. That's me. Just a couple of things. In case you hadn't noticed, NCSBN, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, the big body of which all state regulatory bodies are members, released its 2024 National Nursing Workforce Survey. Provides information about the national nursing workforce. So lots of information there about everything from practice characteristic demos to most highly educated nursing workforce in the country since it's been measured. So that's cool. Fun facts. Highly suggest that you read that report if you care to know what's going on with the workforce in the country. Also, as for board members, I just wanted to let you know, I don't know if you saw the email, but from NCSBN on May 22nd, the Model Act and Rules Committee of NCSBN is holding an informational meeting for an update. So kind of the things that they're talking about. So that committee is responsible for revising the Model Act and Rules that basically define the scope and standards of practice for nursing. And those are incorporated into our laws by reference. And so if you are interested in seeing what the kinds of things the committee is talking about, and it's also an opportunity for you to provide feedback as regulatory persons in nursing, highly encourage you to attend. There should be information. I got an email, but there should be information for attending that meeting on NCSBN's website. If you don't have an NCSBN login, let your executive officers know. And I think that's all I have in the way of announcements. Any questions on any of that? Anybody want to provide testimony on my report?
No raised hands.
Cool, go team. All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes. And so we have 3 sets of minutes. It's the executive session minutes from February 6th and the open and executive session minutes from April 3rd. If there's anything that the board needs to discuss with respect to the executive session minutes, we can go into executive session to discuss those changes. Does anybody have any revisions to any of the 3 sets of minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as circulated?
This is Bradley. Moved.
Thank you, Bradley, for the motion. Is there a second?
This is Rebecca Moore.
I'll second. Oh,
Thank you for the enthusiastic seconds. I will take Rebecca's second. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it. The motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, we're gonna move on to an update. And if it's okay with you, Karen, I'm just gonna like blow through this because it's just the one thing. So the Education Committee provided a report at its last meeting at the last board meeting. The Education Committee provided its report from its previous meeting, but we didn't include one item, which was the approval of the Veritas. What is it? I want to get it right correctly. It is a Veritas remedial course for LPNs. And so this was an inquiry from UH Maui College. The Education Committee voted after considering the course to approve that course with the qualification that the UH Maui College made the inquiry, that UH Maui College's faculty would ensure that the students met the 60-hour minimum clinical requirement for the refresher course. So that is the committee's recommendation. So we put that to the board right now. A move to approve and accept that recommendation from the Education Committee related to the Veritas LPN remedial course. Is there a second?
Bradley second.
Thank you for the second, Bradley. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it. The motion carries. And again, I forgot to ask for testimony. Would anybody like to provide testimony on that agenda item?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you very much. All right. That takes care of agenda item number 4. All right, we're gonna move to agenda item number 5, which is delegation to the Education Committee. I'm gonna hand this one over to the EO.
Sure. So coming off the backs of that discussion on the approval of the Veritas remedial course, right now there's something of a 2-month gap in anything that goes to the Education Committee, because first there's a month before any application that we put on the agenda for the Education Committee goes to the committee, and then another month before whatever the committee has recommended goes to the full board for approval. And so to ease that time gap, the suggestion is to just delegate authority to the Education Committee to approve or make decisions on school faculty and nurse license applications that they're reviewing currently. And of course, the Education Committee, same with the delegated applications that we're doing now amongst 3 board members, they would be able to punt that to the full board if they so choose to do so. So any thoughts on that proposal?
Discussions, questions, concerns about that?
I think you need a quorum of the full board. So would the education committee have, what is it?
It's only 3 members.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
the numbers.
I see. All right.
So to get around that, we'd have to, the education committee would have to comprise 5 members of the board, is what you're saying.
At least, yeah.
All right. Well, never mind.
Never mind, because I really like, because it's frustrating, especially for our schools when they propose an inquiry. Like, can we take this class? Can we recommend this class to our students? And then it's a very long delay. So that's pretty unfortunate.
Can you explain that again?
So a minority of the board, not the quorum, cannot make a decision.
But then we
On
have
behalf.
delegated board members that make decision and application. It's like one person making a decision.
Is that like a recommendation and then it gets ratified later by the board?
And that would be the same thing for the committee. They'd be making a recommendation that gets ratified later.
Okay. So it's kind of, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that other boards have like application review committees where they approve the application and then that approval will get ratified at a later. So that, I mean, whatever the education committee approves, it still gets ratified by the board later. Is that okay?
I guess if we analogize it to the applications, but another option is the committee is composed of the quorum. That is a quorum, but if that doesn't work,
I think it has to be less than quorum though, right? In order for them to.
well, like for example, real estate commission, there's 9, and basically the 9 people sit on in various capacities. There are 3 committees.
So how does the decision making on those committees work? So if real estate has like 3 committees, so they have a 9-member board and there's 3 committees that deal with the functions of the board.
So like different people are chairs for condo, different people are chairs for education, different
Okay.
people are chairs for laws and rules. But they all get to vote. So when they get 5 in that committee,
Yeah.
they got 5 for the commission, the full block board.
I thought like for the committees, they have to be less than quorum. Otherwise, that's like a board decision outside of a board meeting.
That's PIG. Permitted Interaction Group.
But isn't this technically like a permitted interaction group of a sort?
Yes, but we're not making it, you're not putting them under a permitted interaction group because then they have to dissolve after they make their report and the board acts. It's a standing committee. It's not a PIG. And I don't think the quorum, fewer than quorum limitation pertains to the standing committee.
So if one board member is able to approve applications outside, and that's not quorum, outside of the, so are we violating the law there?
No.
But the committee would be.
Yeah, I think I'm having a hard time figuring out what the difference between allowing a board member to review an application and then have the delegated authority to say, yes, continue processing this application
Ratified by the board.
and then ratified by the board subsequent to that versus what we're asking to do with the education committee, which is functionally the same thing, only instead of one person saying, let's continue processing this application, it's 3 people discussing and then saying, let's continue processing whatever it is, or approving a course or whatever.
If
the
you
case
want to
is.
follow that analogy, we could do that.
You seem to have concerns, though. Okay.
It's just, they never did for this board,
Right.
but by analogy, I could see that.
Okay.
So it would be okay to delegate. People or-
Delegate with ratification. I think
Yes,
is
yes.
this particulars that we're looking for. So the education committee would not be making decisions on behalf of the board. They would be making decisions which then would be subsequently voted on and ratified by the board.
I mean, but like,
Okay.
sorry, and that was the thing that we kept out of that explanation. It does eventually get to the board. And
Yeah.
there's always a report after the committee that we present to the board that they ratify formally.
So we just don't have to wait for the
Right.
board's formal acceptance of those recommendations to be able to respond to a school saying, yes, you can tell your students to take this course.
So just the way we explain
Kind
it,
of
sorry.
thing.
Yeah.
Right? No. I appreciate the questions and the comments from the TAG. So.
So we're
Are we
okay
good?
to move forward that way?
Well,
Right, so you can communicate that it is approved by the education committee and subject to the ratification by the board at the next meeting.
okay, wait, so now we understand that there's a process. We have to come back to the board to discuss whether or not we are okay with this process.
My only question is it hasn't happened in my time, but is there any examples of times where the education committee has made a recommendation and the board did not move forward with that recommendation?
In the entire time I've been on the board of nursing, I cannot think of a single instance where that's been the case.
Yeah, because the education committee is filled with really smart people.
Yeah. And educators. The committee has punted difficult decisions, like the
Yes.
external board of nursing approval, that was punted.
Correct.
to the board. So if it's something they feel that's outside of their purview, they will punt it back to the full board for discussion. So
Yeah, I see no issues.
Any concerns from any of the board members?
No.
Shaking any testimony from the public on this issue?
there are no raised hands.
Brilliant. So we need a motion? Is that what we need for the delegation? So I move that the board will delegate authority to approve, the education committee may approve things on its agenda, subject to the ratification by the full board subsequent to that. So the delegation authority goes to the education committee. Is there a second?
Jill, I second.
Thanks, Jill, for the second. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you very much. So yeah, that should streamline things. Thanks, everybody, for that. All right, next item on the agenda is agenda item number 6, which is a discussion of continuing competency policies, EO.
Because we have something of a light agenda today in applications, I thought this would be a good opportunity to
Lengthen the meeting.
always what I'm trying to do here.
Let's make the meeting as long as possible, so stuff things on the agenda.
I miss you guys. So this is probably going to be an ongoing conversation just because of how lengthy the continuing competency guidebook is. But just wanted to kickstart the conversation on making revisions to the continuing competency guidebook. Just because it's been a while. I think you can see from the packet provided that there were a couple of updates that were made. I know that header says 2025, but those updates were actually made in 2023. So aside from those, there really haven't been any changes. And I know that, for example, when nurses try to reactivate their licenses or try to, what's the word I'm looking for, where it's been expired and they try to restore their licenses, right? And they submit continuing education, I'm constantly getting BLS, PALS and NALS
Okay.
certificates because the only way they would know otherwise is if they turn to page 32 of the competency guidebook, which I try to point them to in email, but it's not likely anyone's going to scroll that far back. So
He likes reading.
no one likes me, at least of all.
That's why my suggestion to Leanne many moons ago was to put this in your rules. But she said, that's gonna take too long. And she just made a guidebook. And I said, I get this is, a constantly evolving guidebook, but to the extent you have substance there that, page 32, and you often get inquiries about it, it would benefit them to be in the HAR instead of a guidebook, because
That's a bigger conversation.
I mean, yeah, but actually, this, except for being, the policy of the board, doesn't really have the force and effect of HAR.
I see what you're saying, right? Because it's very like vague within our administrative or within the statute itself that
It's very broad.
it's very, very broad. Do we want to pigeonhole ourselves that way though?
No, I'm not, you're not locked into it. I mean, you have certain things that are substance there.
Okay.
That you're not ever gonna change. You're always gonna approve this national certification.
Sure.
you're always gonna approve this learning activity.
So it,
So put it,
so the suggestion is to, are you talking about putting the content that is currently in the guidebook into the rules or make reference to the guidebook in the rules?
no,
Not
not the
the,
latter.
okay, so
The
all the
former.
information currently in the
The
guidebook.
content, the substantive content that you know you're gonna be with, you're gonna always approve.
Yeah.
That will always qualify. At least put the bare minimum in. And I get that it will be always evolving and there will always have the chance of something new being submitted for your consideration. But to the extent that you know certain things will always get that you will say, turn to page 18, turn to page 32, that is always going to be yes. I would
There's
recommend.
precedent. Dental board has their accreditor, like the approved accreditations in their rules as well.
Mm. A lot of people do.
I guess my concern is, if we place certain things within rules, and then there are obviously going to be other things, more flexible things, such as specific certifications that are going to be in a guidebook, then now there's two places that a nurse has to turn to figure out how to meet the continuing competency guidelines, or whether or not they meet an exemption or something like that. Whereas, this is definitely unwieldy, but if it could be trimmed down and still be a single source for understanding how to meet the guidelines, I feel like that would still be okay.
I get that you don't want multiple sources, but from my viewpoint,
Mhm,
having one source that is legally defensible
mhm.
is better than having zero and just having a single reference point.
Basically,
I would rather have multiple reference point if one of them is at least legally sound.
you're saying like you want like authority, rule authority, basically to kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I
enforce.
get you prefer single versus multiple. But to the extent that this can be reduced by 10 or 15 pages, and those 10 or 15 pages of content that can go into a rule,
Mhm,
HAR,
mhm.
legally defensible, solid, then you only have, 15 pages of a guidebook.
I have a question for you. And this isn't, you weren't here for this discussion, but actually it's related to the accreditation part of we no longer accept board approved programs. It's
Mhm.
just accredited programs. So that is a longer conversation to have, but it is sort of related to this. Thoughts on that?
Wait, what's your question, Chelsea?
Like, just going, what we were talking about, so if we're already gonna be putting this in for the CE component.
Yeah.
There is gonna have that conversation for the regular curriculums for like nurse licensure. Moving away from board approved to just accredited.
Oh, okay, not CE.
Is that,
So is that in your HRS?
I don't know, is that like? Well, what am I trying to say? Like. It's gonna create problems. Like, so even doing this is gonna create some issues as well.
What problems is it going to create?
Well, for the curriculum part, it's for the endorsement component. There's gonna be people coming into our state that are gonna have board approved curriculums that they've completed.
Uh-huh.
Do we still accept them? If all we're accepting is accredited?
Well, don't you have to follow, is it in the HRS? Then it either has to be in the HAR or the HRS if you're going to not accept.
That would be
board
more of a statutory change we would need to do.
Well, what does your 457 say about the?
So I think
endorsement?
In the opinion of the board, they meet the education requirements.
No, it's not
Yes,
that way.
they meet the education requirements of the board at the time that, yes, the time of graduation.
There's that one, but there's a more specific one and I can't.
But Chelsea, wait, okay, so just hold up for.
No, I just wanted
Is
to
your-
like,
Is your question about the sort of like, if we put all these into a rules package, right? Which is what I think you're actually asking about without actually saying the word. So putting rules that for the continuing competency, the potential change to accepting accredited versus board approved programs, the removal of the exclusionary formularies. So help me God, let's get rid of the exclusionary formulator because we already decided to do that 700 years ago. So putting all those in a rules revision package, you're concerned about the implications that what, they all get approved and then we have to figure out what the long range implications of that from a process standpoint is? Is that what you're talking about? And
You're worried about, let me see if I got your comments. You're worried about the long-term implications as it pertains to endorsement?
For not the CE, but the curriculum, if we were to move away from, because this is gonna, if we move to just approving like the accredited programs, I think that'll solve the fraudulent transcript aspect of things. So we can more easily deny applications if we. do.
Like it was just approved by California or New York or Florida?
Yeah, so
Right.
that's what we're accepting now because it is
Right,
board approved,
right.
but if we go to like, no, it has to be an accredited program. Therefore, then most of these programs we would not accept and be like, sorry, you don't qualify for licensure here.
So if I'm reading your 457, the endorsement is says. And in the opinion of the board, the applicant meets the qualifications required of RNs in this state at the time of graduation. Is that what you're looking at? The
I think it's within our,
vague?
I don't think it's that one, it's in our administrative rules, but I have to look for it. But it's just a broader conversation of like, do we? How drastic of a change does the board want for the topic right now, is the question. So we're already talking about the exclusionary formula, which is something that the board has already kind of approved. So and then including the CE component. I think there's other things in terms of even initial licensure or the 6B question, I think I'd want to put into rule.
okay, so here's what I'm gonna propose at this juncture. The conversation about what we incorporate into a rules revision package is a separate question, I think, from revising the continuing competency guidebook. So I appreciate that the DAG has given us counsel that we really ought to be incorporating a lot of these guidelines into the rules, which would require that rules revision. But I think we are cart before the horse because we haven't yet figured out what the things are that are basically immovable about the continuing competency rules. And I think that warrants us going back into the guidebook, taking a look at what it is that needs revising, make the revisions that we think are appropriate at this juncture, and then figuring out what subset of that information should be placed into the rules as opposed to the guidebook. Does that seem like a sensible process?
It does. And then my question to that is, do you guys want to involve people outside the board? Because then we can do it in PIG. Do you guys want to consult with people outside of the board?
No.
No, we want to keep it.
And not because I don't like, I feel like anybody can provide testimony on the continuing competency requirement at any time. But I think one of the challenges for me anyway, in looking at the guidebook, is that it's very clear that it wasn't written by regulators, like to me. Like the requirements for how do you prove that you actually did a peer reviewed publication? Like, why is the requirement not just submit the citation and a link to your publication? Like the way that that's written in the guidebook is needlessly complicated. So I appreciate that there's perspective from outside the Board of Nursing that would say, these are the reasons we should include things. But our job is providing good guidance to nurses who are trying to meet the requirement for what they need to do from a practical standpoint. And I think that we can simplify a lot of the language, but I think that we need to be looking at that as the board to be like, here's what we will accept. Here's how we will know you did the thing. And I don't think we need to make it more complicated than that. Personally, Bradley.
I would also just want to say that because it is so hard to change the rules, we have to be incredibly careful what goes in there because that is going to be a frustration point if we need to change things.
I agree. And so that's where I think our hesitation is putting the CE component in the rule.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I see,
with you
I
on
see
that
where you're going
hesitation.
because the other side of that coin is that when we're saying like, well, this is how you would meet it with this competency book, they're gonna be like, well, where's your authority?
Yeah,
require that. And so I see where you're coming with that too. So it's balancing it.
that's always my question. I'm like, where in the rules does it say we have to ask them, submit a 3-page prospectus, basically?
Right. And then they're like,
So
based off of what, right? So it's off of this guidance that we
Right.
have no enforcement. Yeah, so I see both points. So food for thought, everybody.
Yeah, so Karen, were you gonna say something?
I agree with the conversations, and Chelsea, I appreciate that the board is considering requiring accredited nursing programs for, I'm thinking initial licensure. But if they get that licensure someplace else, they get their license, like we're gonna accept their license, whether they went to an accredited nursing program or not, I believe. But we have 2 practical nurse programs in our state that are not accredited. Anyway, I
Correct.
want to point that out.
That is correct. So there is that.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. There's a broader conversation that needs to be had.
Yes.
So
So, okay, so here's what I want you guys to do is think about if you, as board members who know the rules, think about what we need to change, especially if you're on the education committee. There's lots of weirdness and opportunity, I think, for the rules to be improved, et cetera. So I think that's a conversation we're gonna pen for a different time. So I want to get us back to the continuing competency guidebook for the moment. So if it is the case that we're going to, per the DAG's recommendation, move portions of the content, like here is what you need to do to demonstrate that you've met this requirement or completed this learning activity, I think that's where our energy is best spent in terms of these revisions. So do you have a recommendation to how we do this, Alex? Because I've looked through the guidebook. I have comments all throughout.
and it's repetitive.
There's
It's,
so much information.
yeah,
that
there
doesn't need
it
to be
is.
in there.
I mean, even when I remember when I was being trained on the CE part, literally Leanne was like, here, read this. And I'm like, it's a lot to go through. It is. And I think we still debate on stuff. So like,
Right.
so
Maybe not any specific directives right now. I
Okay.
would probably just put this back on the agenda
Okay.
in a meeting or two, and just to, now that we've had this opening conversation, maybe we'll come back and then, having read through the guidebook, maybe have some specific discussions on parts of the guidebook that you'd like to address or revisit.
I do like simplifying it.
Yeah,
I think
for
it's like a stopgap measure. I mean, at least for this renewal period. So that we have guidance, especially when the restorations come in, because that's gonna be for like the next year or so, right?
Right.
The restoration. So if we can get something in the interim, that would be the immediate goal. And then the long-term goal would be possibly doing a heavy revision of this and then the rules, I guess, or having that conversation.
I think I don't know what you mean by like this,
So like the dates need to be updated in this thing.
clearly,
Oh,
yes, they need to actually, the specific dates need to be removed is what needs to happen.
So I don't know, do we want to work on like just making it so that it's more up to date and then streamlining some of the instructions?
Yeah. I mean, we
Then
can also
we
take a
can
stab
present
at
it
it
to
and
the-
present it.
Or at the next meeting? Yeah,
Do we-
so,
Have to have a list of all the certifying organizations, or can't we have a, because at the bottom too, it said there's a link, to,
I mean, and the guidebook actually does say this is not inclusive of everything. This is just
Correct.
recommended, or this is the stuff that the board has approved essentially, and then the board can approve beyond this guidebook.
true.
Although, I have gotten emails from nurses saying, some of these certifications don't exist anymore, or they've
Yeah.
changed, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
Let's take those out.
yeah.
That's what I was thinking,
So, yeah.
that part,
In the
right
interim,
off the bat.
maybe we
Plus, I
can.
thought it was the end of the document.
Yeah.
Surprise!
I like, oh, okay, great. This is, then, oh.
So
wow.
okay, so I think I'd like to have a conversation at some point about how can we talk about the acceptable certifications without listing them all that
Right.
require constant monitoring and
I
updating.
mean, even if it's
Oddly,
just a
right.
major or like
Yeah.
ACE or whatever, right? So, but I think what Alex is trying to get at is, I think to make our jobs easier, is it okay if he and I go in, we look through, I mean, just to simplify it a little bit, and then we'll put it for board review, probably work with you. so-
Probably. Probably. So yes, I think yes, is the board okay with the EOs taking a first stab at things that would, you guys look at the document from the vantage point of the end user, right? So the nurses are one end user, you guys are the other. So it's gotta be good, clean guidance for them to know what the heck they gotta do. Plus you guys need to be able to interpret it to figure out whether or not something counts. So look at it from the vantage point of who's using it. What I would request for the rest of the board to do, if you have never read the continuing competency guidebook, I strongly recommend that you do so. And if there are places where you're like, ooh, I don't understand this, it seems unnecessary, it seems redundant, this is incorrect, like flag those. And then at some point when the EOs come back with their recommendations for revisions, we can kind of consolidate all of y'all's feedback and things like, these are things that I flagged as things we need to discuss, but that's sort of really predicated on you going through the guidebook with a mind towards trying to streamline and improve the clarity of the guidance. Alex, you have something on your mind, and then Karen, I will get to you.
No, sorry, I was thinking about the next agenda item.
No, then he's ahead of us already. Karen, you were gonna say something.
So I'll be rotating off the board soon, but about a year ago, I advocated strongly to allow ACLS, PALS, and NOWs to be acceptable as continuing ed. I provided information for about 26 boards of nursing, and I believe we were the only, either we were the only ones not accepting, or there may have been one other state. I have that information, but I believe.
I don't think us changed it.
So
Anyway.
here's what happened. Here's what happened. So to remind everybody, Karen actually absolutely provided that argument and that evidence. And at the day we voted on that, I think there were 5 board members present. And there was a motion to accept the advanced life support courses in the various specialty areas. And the vote was made. We did have a majority, but we didn't have a quorum to pass the vote. Would you guys be interested in voting on that again? Does somebody want to make a motion for that?
I would. Oh, this is Jill. I'll make a motion to.
Cannot, not on the agenda,
Oh.
not on the agenda. So we'll pen that. Karen, when do you?
I second the
Yeah.
motion that perhaps next month.
But it's not on the agenda, so we can't make a
Yes.
motion. We'll have to pen that. Karen, you come off the board.
Next one.
I believe I attend June's meeting, and then I believe I am able to attend June, and then I rotate
Oh,
off,
good person.
I believe.
Sherry, do we have an agenda item related to the revisions to the continuing competency guidebook? Can we not make an emotion related to PALS under that agenda item?
On here, number 6.
Oh, yes, making potential updates, it would
Yes.
qualify. It would qualify.
There is an agenda item that allows us to make this motion. Is there a motion to accept or for continuing competency, advanced life support courses in what are they, the cardiac and the infant-
ACLS, PALS, and NOWs.
ACLS, PALS, and NALS. Are we motion to, what?
BLS?
Not BLS, not
BLS.
basic.
Yeah.
Well, just pals and now.
Specifically, not basic,
Advanced.
Advanced.
PALS, and NALS.
Advanced require assessment, instrumentation, and medication administration based on size and weight. The advanced, the ACLS, the PALS, and the pediatric and neonatal require, again, advanced assessment, instrumentation, and medication administration.
Karen, you're making the
I'm making the
assertion that is
motion
the
that
content.
we-
Hold on, Karen. That you're making the assertion that that is the content of the advanced courses, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry. There are other like advanced, not to take us down a rabbit hole, but there are other advanced certifications like trauma nursing, that sort of thing that are actually like even more detailed than ACLS, take multiple days. So I don't know if we should specify the exact course or if we can say advanced certifications. Does that make
Those
sense?
fall under certification,
Great.
which we already have a whole list of certifications.
And I think the thing that we're
Those are
actually.
different category.
DCCA still
Yeah.
is on
Yes,
there?
correct.
Okay,
So
okay.
the other thing I think we're trying to specifically resolve is the specific exclusion
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
VLS and ACLS, which is currently specified in the guidebook. So we're trying to rectify that
Okay,
malfunction.
thank you.
So there is a motion to not accept BLS, but to accept the advanced life-saving course ACLS, PALS, and NALS to qualify for continuing competency. That is there a motion?
I will make that.
Yes, I make
So
the motion.
Is there a second? Karen, I'll take your second.
I'll second the motion.
Great. Is there any board member who wishes to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Way to go, guys.
Hallelujah. Happy years.
Only took you a year,
I do
Karen.
have a question.
Oh, no,
though.
no, I've been fighting the battle longer than that, but.
Yes.
Okay, so I do have a question though, because it also talks about instructor certification. So are we including instructor certifications in with the courses of ACLS PALs and NALs?
I'm not sure.
So the exclusion says can courses, this is a FAQ in the guidebook, can courses such as BLS, ACLS, PALs and NALs, or instructor certifications in the aforementioned learning activities be applied to my continuing competency credits? So, page 32.
Well, 32 of this 32.
32 of
Yeah.
the guidebook itself. Is that true?
34.
I
but
don't even
yes,
know.
Yeah, 32. So that's my question, like, we talked about courses, but can we also accept the instructor certifications for those? ACLS PALs and NALs?
I mean,
Was that in the?
if we,
I mean, I would say yes.
I would
I would say
say,
yes. I mean,
yeah.
I'm for that.
Yeah,
Because
I
that's
mean.
a lot of work for instructors.
But also, let's also note that there is a provision amongst the learning activities that if you prepare continuing ed, that counts for continuing competency.
Okay,
So
there you go.
I feel like that would also qualify under there. Do you want to specify in the motion?
I think just clarifying that for specifically 8,
Okay.
we're gonna accept it.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
but I mean, to that extent, right, like, we want the whole continuing competency, so I think if you're instructing, you're in that spirit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay.
think that is the intention.
All right, I'm good.
I didn't ask if there was testimony on this agenda. Is there anybody who would like to provide testimony on this agenda item?
There are no raised hands.
For me. All right, so I'm going to reiterate my request to the board. Please, between now and our next meeting, review the continuing competency guidebook, so help me, and flag things that you think warrant clarification. Can we simplify them? Can we streamline them? And then think about what things we're willing to make permanent enough that we would move into the rules as opposed to the guidebook. Can you guys do that for me?
Yes.
Right on. And then we will take other recommendations from the EOs as they get the opportunity to look at the guidebook as well. Go team. Thanks, everybody, for that delightful discussion. All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is actually the executive officer's report. So.
So first, the nurse licensure renewal period opened on April 21st and ends on July 30th, 2025.
June.
I'm sorry, June, excuse me. Revising that. Yeah,
June, guys, June 30th.
my bad. June 30th. So there are around 46,000 licenses eligible for renewal right now. And
Did you say 46,000?
46,000.
46, not 4 to 6.
46.
Yeah.
That would be lovely. Sorry, I said that a little.
That's crazy for a state our size.
It's mental. It's wild. Okay.
That's all I wanted everyone to know. Get in before June 30th.
Everybody take your
2025.
CEs.
Yes.
Everybody do your continuing competence.
Meet your,
And in case there's any confusion, since I talked to a nurse who was confused, you must complete your continuing competency activity, must be completed sometime between July the 1st of 2023 and June 30th of 2025, in case there was any confusion about that. Go team.
It's right on my card I got from the
Well,
board.
to that point, you
Yes.
are attesting on your application that you did your CE though.
You should do it
So
first.
you should do it before you submit your.
Right, if you need until June 30th, then don't renew your license before that. All right, sorry, Io, go ahead.
thank you for that. Okay, moving on to the 2025 legislative session, these last two bills. First, SB 119 relating to nursing. This was to appropriate funds to establish the BSN program at University of Hawaii Valley College. So the conference draft 1 passed final reading. And same with SB 1373 relating to the administrative licensure actions against sex offenders. Conference draft 1 passed final reading. So both are on their way to the governor's office. Any public testimony on these items or my report?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you, Io. All right, we will move on then to reports from Hawaii nursing organizations. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. Laura Reichart. And meanwhile, if we have representatives from Hawaii ANA and Happen, we can bring them on over in anticipation of their testimony. So we'll go ahead and get started with the Hawaii State Center for Nursing.
Hi, I'm not able, it's not allowing me to, oh, here I am. I was like, I'm not able to make my video scene. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for that lively discussion about contingent competency credits. I just have 3 updates. One is we had a very successful Hawaii Nursing Transition to Practice conference on April 25th. It was the first that we ever did of that type, and people, I think, were really energized. To that note, we have had a wild amount of people go through nursing residency programs, become preceptor trained, and also get specialty training. So a lot of people should have already completed their continuing competency well before this period of time. We also have a report that is recently posted on our website, and that is the nursing workforce projections, which I've talked about a number of times. Our website is hawaiicenterfornursing.org, and the report is titled Hawaii Nurse Workforce Projections 2022 to 2037. If you would like a formal summary of that, we can provide that if that would interest you in the future. And then finally, we are very thankful for the link on your license renewals for the nursing workforce supply survey. So that is going to be some fun new information that we will get from all of the nurses who are completing their survey. And as of today, we have had, as of yesterday, we had 3,731 individuals complete the survey. So it's moving along. It's a little bit behind what we had in 2023, but it is still it's still pretty good numbers. So we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to seeing those data in the fall. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Laura? Thanks, Laura. We appreciate your report.
I just want to
I have-
say, I want to say
Oh.
something. Thank you so much for that conference. Because
Oh,
it's
good.
really needed by faculty that I work with. So thank you very much for putting that together.
Wonderful. And thank you for that feedback. I'm sorry, I had one more note. I just wanted to mention one more bill that relates to professional development in the state. So we have the preceptor tax credit bill, HB 303, did not pass forward. So the existing program as it was initially enacted in 2018 under Act 43 is still continuing. But I did want to mention HB 796. HB 796, it got a CD1 passed through, and that actually proposes to, let me read it to you. It includes a 5-year sunset or an annual 1/3 reduction beginning in the 6th year of a credit for all tax credits that currently exist in any future tax credits. So as it relates to continuing competency, precepting is a very big component of that in our state. And I just wanted to mention that this bill is related to that environment and will impact the tax credits, the preceptor tax credits due to the nature of this bill.
So the bill proposes to sunset all tax credits. Is that what I understood you say correctly?
It says either any income tax credit either existing under this chapter shall have either a 5-year sunset date or beginning with the 6th year, an annual 1/3 reduction in the credit amount allowed to be claimed over a 3-year period. So it'll be like a 3-year retirement instead of a sunset on the 5th year.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. If there's no questions or comments on Laura's report, let's go ahead and hear from Hawaii ANA.
Hi, this is Linda Beechnor, and Elizabeth Kapua is absent today because she's ill. So I came back to say hello to you all because I've been missing you all. So hello.
You come anytime.
Pardon me?
You can come to any board meeting you want to, Linda. You don't have to miss us.
Thank you, but I missed. I'm also not turning on my camera because I had a Mohs procedure this week on my face and I'm all black and blue, so you don't want to see that. So, moving on, we have currently Hawaii ANA has well over 500 members, although we are very proud of that, that list. We're still reaching forward to all 17,000 RNs who live and work in Hawaii to get them all to join. So that's our goal. Events coming up. We have a May Nurses Day event on Thursday, May 15th, where we have a 1 hour free CE. We also sent out notebooks and pens, gifts for all of our members. For Nurses Week. Those are going out next week, and to acknowledge all of our members. We have a conference coming up on September 27th offering 5 CEs, and that will be again at the Honolulu Country Club all day, and we have invited the governor to be our keynote speaker, and we haven't had full confirmation on that yet. Elections are open. We're looking for a new president-elect, and in particular, that's a 4-year commitment to our organization. So we're looking for somebody who's been involved in politics and healthcare policy to join us for that. And we're also looking for a secretary and a neighbor island director and others. So those election nominations are open at this time. I wanted to mention that we are spreading the word as usual about the survey, and that we're encouraging everybody in our newsletter that goes out to over 8,000 nurses in the state every month to not only do their license renewal, but get the survey done. I also had a little question about that, if I'm allowed to do that, is if they've already done their license renewal, can they go back in to do the survey?
Yes.
Yes.
The link should
Okay.
be in my email. Yes, they can take it at any time before it closes.
Great, thank you. Advocacy out of Hawaii ANA. We are following up on safe staffing bills with our health committees in the legislature and with Hawaii Nurse, other organizations, and particularly the unions who introduced the bills. And so we'll be following up on that for next year, maintaining coalitions with several community organizations that we were working with and providing testimony on, like Youth Tobacco, Free Hawaii Group, the Climate and Health on national and local venues, the Patient Bill of Rights, we testified on that. We worked with Moms and Guns, and we're really disappointed that that the automatic weapons bill did not make it through. We'll work on that with them again next year. And we also worked with MAD on the alcohol bills. And with our fellow nursing organizations on legislature for all those other nurse-related bills. And my last item is that there was an article in Honolulu Advertiser by Nina Wu this week about the emergency readiness that I hope everybody saw. And it was interesting that the number one reason why Hawaii was listed so low was that we didn't have a nurse compact. I was horrified to see that as that brought up. And Hawaii ANA is doing a response to the article that we will send to the newspaper. And that's my report.
Thank you, Linda. We appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Linda? Thank you so much, Linda. We're happy to see you or hear you anyway. And so our last report will be from the Hawaii Association of Professional Nurses. Jeremy?
Oh, there I am. I couldn't get my buttons clicked in time. Sorry, everybody. And like Linda said too, it's good to see you guys again. Sorry, I've been absent for the past few meetings. Not a whole bunch to report, to be honest. We're continuing to have our monthly meetings. We're getting settled in board wise. I'm getting ready after, what is it, 4 years now, to pass the baton over to our president-elect at the end of the year, Dr. Burrell, which is amazing, and she's great. Probably some of the biggest things that we've been doing is our work in collaboration with the Provider Shortage Task Force. As we know, there was some pretty big things in the legislature that they got through, especially with prior authorizations, and they're working a lot, even all the way up to the national level, hopefully with prior authorizations and that kind of thing. There are a couple of more things on our radar, specifically with HMSA and some of the reimbursements. We're not prepared or moving forward on that at the moment because we're gathering more data on that and everything. So I don't want to speak on that per se, but everything is happening. We're always open to anybody listening or interested to have people on our committees, especially our legislative, like Linda said, with her organization. We're all about advocating for our profession, and we have our educational committee and social committee and all kinds of fun things to do. So yeah, it was an exciting legislative period, and we'll continue to monitor things as they pop up and check in with you guys each month. So I really appreciate it again, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, Jeremy. Anybody have questions for Jeremy? Thank you very much. We always appreciate hearing from our local nursing organizations. So thank you for your ongoing participation with the board. All right, that concludes that agenda item. So we are now going to move on to agenda item number 9, which is related to applications. So if you are here as an applicant, the general process the board uses that we'll go into executive session, discuss the confidential aspects of your application. If we have questions for you, we will invite you in to answer those questions for us. And so we'll discuss that in executive session. We'll come back out, and at that point, we'll invite anybody who has testimony wish to provide to do so. So that said, at this time, I'd like to move to go into executive session so that the board may, actually, before I finish that motion, we have a very short list of applications today. So if you were planning to stick around for the Ed Committee meeting, I don't recommend you run off too far because I don't expect this to take as long as it normally does. So just as an FYI, if you want to hear the Ed Committee meeting. All right, that said, I'd like to move to go into executive session in accordance with HRS 92-4, 92-5 to consider and evaluate personal information relating to individuals applying for professional or vocational licenses, and to consult with the board's attorney on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. Is there a second?
That's a Jill, I second.
Thank you, Jill. For the second, does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion?
Anybody here for public comment?
Anybody here to provide public comment on the applications, right? So not anybody, not just the applicants.
There are no raised hands.
Great, thank you very much. Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. We are in executive session.
Hi, Lindsay Groth. This is Mark, Secretary for the Board of Nursing. The board members would like to speak with you about your application. Could you please accept the breakout room request?
Okay, we have one person with their hand up. Applicant. So Julie, I see your hand up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and do some voting on applications. And if you still want to provide testimony, I will invite you to do that at that time, if that's okay with the DAG. Great. Okay, so at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the ratification list for licensure for LPNs, RNs, and APRNs that were appended to the agenda for today's meeting. Is there a second? Thank you, Jill, for the second. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. All right, we're gonna take applications, vote on applications for registered nursing licenses. Is there a motion related to the applications for registered nurses?
Hi, this is Jill. I make a motion to approve the application for registered nurses for Amy Smith and Julie Geyer.
Is there a second on that motion?
This is Bradley, I'll second.
Thank you, Bradley, for the second. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. The applications are approved for Amy Smith and Julie Geyer. Is there a motion related to the last application for registered nursing license?
Yes, this is Jill. I make a motion to approve Lindsay Groth, RN application conditional upon successful completion of the NCLEX or refresher course according to 457-9B.
Does any board member wish to, so can I get a second on that motion?
This is Bradley, second.
Thank you for the second. Does any board member wish to vote no, recuse themselves, or abstain from voting on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. All right, that takes care of our applications. Julie, I wanted to go back to you, wanted to make sure, did you still want to provide testimony on the agenda item? Does anybody actually want to provide testimony on the agenda item related to the applications today?
There are no raised hand.
Great, thank you very much. All right, we will move then to our next agenda item, which is a note about our next meeting, which will be held Thursday, June 5th. I will not be present at that meeting, so you guys will have vice chair, will chair pro tem that day. Yay, that's
Nice,
exciting.
be nice.
If you cannot attend that meeting, please let the executive officers know ASAP so that we can make sure that we have a quorum going into that meeting. All right, and then the last thing, next week is Nurses Week. Yay! We love and appreciate all the nurses who take care of us very well. The healthcare system would implode without you. And so we just want to express our tremendous gratitude and appreciation for all the nurses who work in Hawaii. Thank you for taking care of us. And with that, our agenda is concluded. We are done and adjourned. Have a great day.